the full, vibrant spectrum of the 50 shades of GOP were fully on display this evening's primary kickoff debate. Let's unpack some of the key highlights and discuss.
Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zappo. Let's talk Trump.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and good night to you. And salutations, welcome, namaste. Let's gather around and talk. This is the incorrigible Mr. Zappo, presenting a special segment to the Almost Daily Zencast. Good morning, Trumptopia. The entire full collection of the various shows can be found on the interwebs. The most direct link I could give you to it is Spreaker.com/user/Mr. Zeppo. There you can dip your toes into every single one of the various segments of the Almost Daily Zencast variety podcast, audio blog, entertainment shows. This one, GMT, otherwise known as Good Morning Trumptopia, is, as all the rest, my own real, raw, radically unscripted take on what's going on in the thematic spectrum that I've selected for the show, which is, of course, the ongoing ups and downs, roller coaster turmoil events of the struggle between the Trumptopian wing of the Grand Old Party and the rest of the GOP, or the GOP-topian wing of the Grand Old Party, of the Republican Party. I probably could have worded that way more. That needs some upwork, some updrafting. But hashtag two wings, one political party, two tribes, same political party. So much going on this week, in this month, this current temporal living memory moment bubble of historicalness, both at the local, national, and state by state level of these grand United States of ours, as it struggles with its ongoing national and state-by-state debate between those who refuse to believe, quote-unquote, in government and therefore run for office, and those who do, quote-unquote, believe in government and are running for office, which is, of course, comedy gold. But I like to watch, observe, and comment on the political life cycle of election procedures and rituals as if it were some sort of national or international sport. Well, a national sport viewed and commented on internationally. There's so much to say, and there's been so much going on in the world beyond the narrow scope of this internal sub-tribal, wing against wing tug of war going on inside of the Republican / Trumptopian political party, commonly referred to as the GOP. Tonight's debate is truly a fascinating historical nugget of wildness wrapped inside of a week's worth of historical unprecedented national and international current events. And so my mind is spinning. And my proverbial inner monologue record needle is trying to figure out what track to land on first. But if I may, drawing from some notes, put in a tiny sidebar. One of the historical events that happened within this current 48-hour or 36-hour, maybe even this singular 24-hour cycle, my memory's wibbly wobbly and fuzzy enough that I'm not entirely sure how long ago, but I made this note today, so I don't think it happened a week ago. It sort of totally in vibe with the post QAnon post. What's the new Q? DJ Zed? There's a Q something with a new suffix that isn't anon anymore. Whatever happened to Q? Pin on the corkboard. I don't want to get sidetracked. There's a trending item of discussion that I want to note before we deep dive into my actual thoughts about of what was discussed on stage at the GOP's first primary procedural debate, and that's this mocking of. For those of you who may not know because you don't follow international news or whatever, you don't care, the nation state of India managed to successfully, quote unquote, soft land, whatever that means. I guess it wasn't a hard landing where they taken a stab trying to take the piss at Russia. Because for those of you who also not, maybe not fully up to speed, Russia's attempt to do a very similar thing crash landed into the moon, supposedly. Apparently. I use the word apparently because supposedly sounds way too cynical. But then again, I can't instantly travel to the moon to verify any of this, right? And dare I be so bold as to point out neither can most people out there on the interwebs making claims in either direction. But I digress. Funny that there's a lot of derogatory commentary being spread, and I'm sure it will spin out of into like trending, viral, qualifying national and international attention over the coming days and weeks. But that India's successful attempt is getting snubbed and derided, getting derisive commentary in this fashion, and Russia's complete and utter failure. Crickets. But I digress. So India successfully lands a thing, whatever it was. I'm not pretending to be an expert on India's space program and the current event. I just know what's trending over here in my little corner of the Infoverse about the memes about it. And then the snarky and utterly, in my humble opinion, underinformed claims. But there are memes already that were floating almost immediately. Sometimes I swear that memes hit the internet before the thing is even done. But that's a whole nother pin on the corkboard. That's a discussion we've already delved into before in previous episodes. And please do, friends, if you're new, don't be intimidated by the 7 years worth of content. Just gleefully dive in and out of episodes as your interests pull you. I need to do a better job adding hashtags and keywords, but you can help by dropping those as comments in the original episodes over on Sprecher.com/show/Zencast, for the Zencast in particular, or for any of the other shows, as like I said before, you can find by going to /user/Mr. Zeppo. And it's Sprecher with an SPR, EAKER, as in the German word for speaker, as in a person who speaks, as in a public speaking engagement, because we are here to engage in civilized public discourse. And the people making fun of India are cracking me up because they're making fun of India based on a mysterious meme that came out of nowhere. No one knows who made it, right? At least I'm not aware of any attribution or claim of authorship. And it's based on an obvious, erroneous, borderline misleading statement. And that's that people are making fun of the image or imagery from the telecast of India's event. And from that imagery, there's the giant screen I'm sure this is at some point full screen broadcast in India and therefore in other places and or on YouTube and of course available on the internet. But from whatever their version of NASA is called, which I'm totally woefully underinformed, I have no idea. But kudos to them if they successfully achieved this thing. I have no idea. I have no clue, right? And there's a whole long discussion to be had about moon landing and space being real or not, which I don't want to get sidetracked into because this episode is about the inaugural kickoff event of the 2024 election madness. But this meme, this derisive meme is like, how can, basically, if I may paraphrase it, how can anyone think this is real? Okay. But from the official broadcast, the imagery that was being broadcast, that wasn't a live feed from outer space near the moon from a second spaceship or something. That was a scientific, mathematic-based, like telemetry-based representation of the moon and the whatever the spacecraft is called, the moon lander, let us just generically call it, okay? Which of course looked a bit cartoonish because it was not a freak. There wasn't some camera crew up in space with live cameras. And to the best of my understanding, there was not a second spaceship in the, following along the first one with a camera. And like these memes, and this is the reason I call this out, it's hilarious that people fall for this because they'll repost it and then spew slanderous, mean, spiteful, insulting, bully language and make mental judgments about those who patently understand that wasn't a representation of a visual live camera feed of the spaceship. That was a science-based, like, graphic depiction of, what word did I use? I in my note. Okay, because I hate it. And I'm going to probably spend the next week and a half being forced to copy paste my own commentary at multiple people because this will now make the rounds on the interwebs and will trickle its way across my feed for several days, I'm sure. Like new iterations of this same or variations on this meme. But I hate to break it to everyone out there who misunderstood or falls for the misleading meme. But I assure you that no one at India's headquarters for the space mission was thinking or pretending or saying or representing, and that no one from India was so naive or foolish to believe blindly, unless someone had misled them on purpose, to think that was a live camera feed from outer space. Everyone understood that was a graphic diagram. Some sort of man-made but mathematically accurate graphical representation using artistic rendered, or computer rendered or I don't know who rendered it or how, right? But and maybe the data was live, synchronized live to the movements of the spacecraft. Hopefully, arguably, that's the way it's supposed to work. But the naive people are not the ones celebrating this historic moment. Because I'm fairly certain that most people who watched this, who understand space, who understand space programs, who understand like fundamentals of reality and physics, and they knew that they weren't being pitched those images as if they were live camera feeds from outer space. They understood that those were the Indian Space Agency's graphical representations of the data, right? And that it was a diagram of some kind. Not an actual live feed of the literal actual object in space landing on the moon. Now, will I look anyone dead in the eye in real life and assert to them that I know for a fact that actually happened out there and others? No, because there's no way I couldn't go. I don't have superpowers. I don't have that superpower. I do love to leave a little edge of mystery. But given my basic understanding of actual science and facts and physics and the realities that my cell phone works and that satellite TV works, et cetera, and that, despite claims otherwise, the evidence is there to back up a general reliance. Do I think that all science is free of corruption and absolutely must be obeyed blindly? Of course not, you silly Billy. Whoever is going to knee-jerk regurgitate that absent-mindedly, not critical thinking talking point. Where did you get that talking point from? That would be critical analysis. I've spent my entire life critically questioning what's going on around me. And I can, given an actual real-life understanding of some basic physics, etc., things I just said, I know that is not a live camera feed in space. And I know that is the space agency's graphical depiction of the science, the scientifically accurate data being received back from the ship as it does what it's doing. And it's just, that's how certain forms of meme psychological manipulation, or meme ops, as I like to call them, the post-graphic internet bastard child of psyops, work. And there's so many examples of that, friends. And it's something that is not new. That sort of thinking was not originated by anyone on the internet, dear friends. I hate to break it to all of you who may not realize this, but that sort of psychological manipulation of people using information that is sticky, which is what a meme is. It's not a picture on the internet with words over it. A meme in real life, according to the original definitions that existed from before Facebook and from before the rise of visual graphic memes as we know them today, an actual literary psychological meme is that of like an information bundle that is sticky and clings to the mind and like, is a bit of like, to borrow from music, is a bit of an earworm quality to it, or a brainworm quality to it, and is transmitted over time across social groups, etc. But I digress, and turn your attention, please, to the newest, hottest track from DJ Zed. That's my sidebar for the episode. That was happening today, amongst so many of the things, which will put us pin on the corkboard, because this is a historic event-filled day / week / fortnight / month / quarter / first half of the year. And I've been sort of intermittently fasting, or intermittently on hiatus, and I've been heavily leaning to the in hiatus part of my intermittentness in recent days and weeks. But welcome back to the show. I turn your attention briefly for a hot minute, as I believe this is allowed to. This is my own original music, although I guess to qualify, to make sure that I don't infringe on the technical terms of service of Sprecher.com, I must talk through a portion of this music. So DJ Zed, fire it up. This is a Perfection is Cosmological entitled track, a live-to-tape performance by the literary fictional character and personal sidekick / valet of yours truly, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo over here, who is also a literary fictional character. My favorite robot from another dimension, DJ Zed, as part of the Universalis album, a Deep Gnosis 101 live to tape remix live audio asset engineering improvised performance of robot rock music making for your entertainment. Please get up and wiggle, get the blood flowing, and then contemplate some of the things we've been talking about as we cleanse the palate and move forward with a brief unpacking of some of the wilder notions that were discussed at this evening's first GOP primary debate. Should you be curious to explore the body of work that is the Discotheque Synthetica collection, curated and created and engineered by your favorite dynamic duo of literary fictional robots from other dimensions, because we're not from the same robot interdimensional, multidimensional universe, friends. We're actually We're it's a whole long story, pin on the corkboard. You can read some of it, especially some of the newest chapters that will begin dropping between now and the end of the year by visiting wattpad.com. All these links are available at solo.to/Mr. Zeppo. So yeah, we got a SoundCloud for you to listen to the music. We got a Wattpad for you to read the backstories and the future science fiction stories and the fan fiction adventure stories, etc. And yeah, we've got a couple of other links for you to explore and enjoy. Work it, DJ Zed, work it! Right to the end. Welcome back, friends. Did you watch the debate? Did you skip it? Would love it. I wish I was popular enough by now that we had like a live call-in phone line so we could get live commentary or some sort of internet equivalent. People keep telling me to do that with Discord, but Discord is just weird and disorienting enough in how it works that I don't want to. I haven't put myself through the hard work of integrating it into my workflow. But pin on the corkboard. Let me know what you think. Let me know what happened. Did you watch the thing? Did you not watch the thing? For the record. Because on social media, I get a lot of people telling me what I did and didn't do and did and didn't think and do and do not know. For the record, my following commentary and any of the commentary I've already posted on the social medias is not me repeating what was said on some mainstream pro-Joe legacy media channel. I watched this debate on Fox News Live. Thought about it. I mean, the only time I changed the channel away was when the commercials were on. But I always do that. Done that my entire life. Unless I like the commercial. And there's a whole pin on the corkboard discussion of things we probably should do an episode about there, about commercials, had very, very nuanced, very, very complicated feelings about them, and how I do indeed love some of them, but generally despise the industry, even though I would totally, I totally did once, strive quite uphill to try and work in that as part of my overall attempt to break into the entertainment industry. Pins on the corkboard. Both past tense and future tense. If you don't know what the corkboard is, please stand by. I'll explain it before this episode is out. The GOP, the grand old party, the party of Lincoln and Reagan, and most presciently in this moment, Nixon. My biggest critique and commentary, which I'm sure is nothing shocking or surprising, especially if anyone's been really following along and paying attention to my perspective over the last 7 years that I've been intermittently hosting this podcast on an almost daily, not quite really almost basis, is that, minus a bazillion points, House GOP, for the blatantly obvious, although deliciously marginalized and effectively tucked away, quite well hidden away throughout most of the show, mindless, what's the word I'm looking for? Kowtowing is appropriate here. But oh my gosh, do I really long for my would-be future co-host that has that word at the drop of a hat, knows me so well, knows the word that my current word lexicon file is missing. The self-subjugation of most members of the GOP to this larger-than-life snake oil salesman, carnival barker, of a used car salesman-like politician that is Donald Trump. And I don't say that just to be mean. Snake oil salesman, I think, is a quite apt literal description of what he does. He has used politics to enrich himself, both in money, in financial terms, and in terms of psychological power over a just broad enough sliver of American society to be a thorn in everyone else's side, and an effective derailer and disruptor. But obviously, if you've been following along, you know quite well that I've got quite a nuanced, and I don't think straight off the shelf, everyone else is saying an opinion about dear old Donald J. Trump. But I am pretty blunt about my criticism of him. And for the record, for anyone who is new, just because I criticize Donald Trump and or have some, tough brotherly love critique for the grand old party does not mean by any way, shape, or form that I'm some sort of blind faith, hyper leftist Joe Biden enthusiast or defender. Never have I ever voted Democrat. Now, when it comes to most social issues, I'm gonna disagree with the Republicans and applaud any voice anywhere on the spectrum that stands up for individual and collective human rights, etc. I don't know. People love to pin me as a leftist, and I really genuinely do not think that I am. But there's plenty of really complicated reasons for why that is. And most people who are too busy trying to just troll and own and spew talking points on, they're really not interested in even hearing you out about it. So I generally don't waste my time. But for those of you who are actually interested in my perspective, so first big thing is that, like, shame on you, Republican National Convention, and everyone who is an officer and a leader, those we see and those we don't see in the public sphere, in the public eye, for continuing to perpetuate this sycophancy to this man who many of us tried to warn you out of concern for the well-being of your own party and out of concern for the well-being of those who would come under his influence, that this guy thrives on spewing nonsense, self-hype, blatant falsehoods, and a creepy form of charming manipulation that borders on, or may very well factually be, whatever dark, creepy mojo behind all cult of personality, is. And here we are, friends. So that's, it's just sad to see the GOP ever so awkwardly try to enforce an allegiance clause, which was obviously engineered to corner people into committing their long-term support in Donald Trump's favor. And he's, quite frankly, as a few of them had the courage to say, unfit and unworthy for office. So there's that. In terms of each of them individually, we can go through a big, giant, crazy breakdown. But I also realized, like, my goal was to make this like a 30, 40-minute episode, and I'm already at 32 minutes, 39 seconds. So I'm going to try to focus down. I should probably split it up into 2 episodes, too. Bravo to those on the stage that dared to call out Trump for the real and truly un-American behavior and activities that he's openly engaged in. And it was fascinating. You got to hand it to them. Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, and Mike Pence, they were not shy at all. Not only about calling out Trump, but about calling out his new sort of unexpected, self-declared heir apparent, Vivek. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, and I don't want to butcher it and then be accused of being racially insensitive. I'm not even gonna. But Mr. Vivek, or Vivek, I do like to call them all by a name. And being, they're politicians, not doctors, right? They're not professors. And they're not Congress. They're not members of Congress, so they don't even have like representative at the front of their name. They got nothing. And that whole thing is fascinating. And he he might very well probably be quite busy self-congratulating himself because he did make a splash. And it was clear, at least it seemed so to me, that part of the audience was on board with some of the noise he was making. But part of the audience was also a bit like, what's he doing? Like, what is he saying? And I don't know what percentage of the audience that was there, and I don't mean the national audience, but I mean the audience of the room, right? Because that I can effectively speculate a little bit on based on the noises I could hear. And I say that as someone who has 35 years professional experience in and training and amateur experience cumulatively in live audience entertainment venues and presenting them. Like, I know how to read an audience. Not a lot of people do. You know who does not know how to read an audience? Ron DeSantis. But we can put a pin on the corkboard. I really should do a special highlighty episode on each individual. We're going to write that down. DJ Zed, make a note. On each of the candidates. On both sides of the thing. But thank you, Donnie. The Republicans have kicked off their efforts super redonkulous early because of Trump. And I don't know if I've already said this on the show or not. I probably have. But the reason Trump, quote unquote, announced his candidacy or announced he was running so effing unnecessarily early was so that he could sort of in a king has no clothes on kind of way presume to put on the mantle of candidate on the verge of winning by a landslide in an election that isn't going to start until next November, a year from this November. Okay? Right? It's the 2024 presidential election. And correct me if I'm wrong. I hope I'm not like delusional. I hope I haven't been like in some sort of coma for 9 months, but it's Thursday, August 24th, 2023, right? Like, I'm not cuckoo crazy, I don't think. And I really, really kind of need to see a calendar now to be absolutely sure. I'm kidding. Or am I? Where's the date? Does this thing have a date? No, that's just... If I click on my thing... No, that doesn't open. Mac, why are you so weird? But you get what I'm saying, right? Okay, so... all of this is like unnecessarily early. So we'll have time to break things down and really take a nice, deep, dark look at everybody who's running against Trump. But the fun and fascinating thing is that was it Pence and Christie? I don't know if Nikki Haley crossed the threshold and actually said anything about this or just sort of flirted in the same general direction with what she had to say about Trump. And I wish I had like an awesome collection of like the best quotes. I do have my winner of my favorite moment of the entire event. But we'll save that for a minute. But out of everybody who had anything to say about Trump, the only ones that I'm, like supportive of in terms of like, thank you and kudos to you for daring to say it. And that's that Trump is unsuited, unworthy, unfit for office. And as I've pointed out, and as constitutional scholars and constitutional lawyers and judges from both sides of the political spectrum, including some Heritage Foundation and what's the other group? Because I always get them kind of confused because they come as a pair. And Heritage Foundation and the other place, the ones that pick all the judges. Because anytime, listen, this is a pin on the corkboard I got to reference all the time, friends. But whenever a Trump supporter complains that the judicial system is owned by whoever they imagine it's owned by, I gotta laugh at them, because the people who pre-screen, aggregate, and provide a pre-selected, like, top tier, like, these are the people we approve of, and you must try and pick from this list, is the Heritage Foundation in this other place. And they're all way over there on the far deep end of the Republican right end of the spectrum. Okay? So it's adorable that, I mean, listen, who do you think is coming up with the talking points about radicalizing and weaponizing the DOJ? The most extreme elements of the radical rightists are. Okay? But that's a whole nother, I digress. I mean, it's clear because you can see the talking points be disseminated ahead of what's going on. And the simple reality is, I mean, we're not going to get into relitigating the entire last presidential election debate, but the lies have been broken open by evidence. Full stop. And as Pence himself pointed out, Trump was lying to the American people and to his supporters when he made the claims about what Mike Pence could or could not do on the day of January 6th. And everything unwinds from that reality. All the evidence is rooted in that simple fact. And the fact is, everyone across the board, in my humble opinion, based on what I've seen and what I remember from living through it in real time, as someone who is kind of interested in observing politics a bit like as if it were a national sport, because I don't find actual sports and sports ball-like activities all that interesting to watch on television. Trump knew he was lying. Team Trump et al., everyone on board in the administration and the re-election campaign knew that his claims were not supported by a single shred of evidence. And I would argue, despite all their bitching and moaning, pardon the B word bomb, the vast plurality of Republicans that voted for Trump knew deep down in the cockles of their heart that he was talking nonsense, that he was blowing malarkey up everyone's bungus, right? And that's not even really your word, so don't try to ping me for using curse words. And here we are. If they had, anyways, this is a whole Trump rant. Said it before and I'll say it again. If he had any real evidence, why didn't he, while he was in charge of the DOJ, inappropriately force the DOJ to impanel a grand jury and let them review it? Oh, well, because if he had actually done that while he was president in office, it would have been a violation of how it's supposed to work, and an actual proof of him projecting his accusations against everybody else are admissions of what he wants to do or is literally doing. But I'll reel it back in. Although they made strides to call him out, the biggest problem is and called not only Trump but also Vivek and Mr. DeSantis out, because being Trumptopian and being a Trumptopian politician who aspires to be the heir apparent and or replacement for Don the Big J Trump, they didn't go far enough, right? Like, I give them enough credit that is due, but could they have gone further? Yes, because I mean, either like unfortunately for the gentleman with the big brushy eyebrows whose name I don't remember at this moment, and like I said, I promised to try and do a big deep dive into everybody who makes it deeper into this election, into this preliminary cycle, as soon as I can. But from everybody, you know, who was at 1%, 2%, 3% up, like some of them were just too bland and non-committal, or focused on trying to not offend the Trump supporters. Or, you know, the full spectrum. This is why I said the full 50 shades of GOP were on display. Because, you know, the DeSantis and Vivek trying to be more Trumptopian than Trump. The likes of Nikki Haley and Chris Christie and awkwardly enough, Mike Pence, being, you know, the former president's vice president and official sidekick, despite that full spectrum of how they relate to the living human individual that is Donald Trump, the real, and they called him the you know, something along the lines of the elephant not in the room. The real Trumptopian, ginormous pink elephant, psychological elephant in the room that no one acknowledges, is that Trumptopia and Trumptopian thinking has run away from out from under Trump himself, right? And the proof of it is in the parallel of these two events. Vivek getting booed. What did he say? Oh, I have this written down somewhere. Hold on, let me pull it up. Quote, and I do believe this is close enough to almost word for word. I am the only person on this stage that is not bought and paid for. Which is a truly bold thing to say. But he also then went on, as I point out on my social media already, to sound very creepy, suspiciously like every other fully bought and paid for right-wing politician that's ever pretended to deny climate change, because what they're busy doing is regurgitating big oil, big petroleum, big gasoline, big car, big fossil fuel industrial complex talking points. And that's the big, dumb, dark, obvious reality that's right there on the face of things, and that most of America sees about the grand old party, and even plenty of members of the opposition. But that's a whole nother discussion, right? Tonight's about them. And that's the thing. Like, say what you want about the Democrats, and there's plenty of problematic issues. There's plenty of evidence of instances of individual political corruption and of, you know, other problems. And I never, for the record, never have I ever blindly defended the DNC or any individual in it. And before anyone comes at me for spending the entirety of my time criticizing the Republican Party here, this is because this is Good Morning Trumptopia. But I digress. We will indeed broaden it up because we got, the DNC is going to jump on the political activities, roller coasters soon enough. Reeling back. A couple more thoughts about some of the highlights. Thank you. I got to give them another sort of shout out of gratitude. Thank you to the three of them. They're the only three that I noticed and that I remember clearly taking a stand on this following issue. But Haley, Christie, and Pence, they called out and shot down the growing, what I call, quote, Putin simping that's been growing steadily in the Republican Party, which is ironic because the Republican Party, the Republicans are literally the party of Machiavellian McCarthyism, witch hunts, of made up false, like using the weaponized false accusation of being communist Russians, right, against Democrats. So it's one of the most absurdly both hilarious and I think downright dangerous things of the topsy-turvy, inside-outy evolution of the political party, of this particular political party, of the Republican political party, that I've watched happen in real time since I was asking questions and pointing eccentricities out of the same party back when it was the party of Reagan, when Ronald Reagan, a former cigarette brand television commercial actor spokesman and fake cowboy on TV, was in the White House, right? It is both hilarious and severely alarming, patently unpatriotic, patently un-American, categorically un-American, and politically and, what's the term? National security level dangerous, that Trump and people like Trump and now Vivek, who seems to be really on this bandwagon, have been hyper-normalizing and sublimating, like making it a non-issue, just burying it deep under other issues, this Putin simping. Given that on the very same day of this debate, Putin appears to, and obviously I don't know, I can't travel to the crash site and verify for myself and do the DNA testing myself. Neither do I have the equipment nor the disposable, billionaire amount of money to go do that. But apparently, all that just happened, right? And we got to put a pin on the corkboard because that's a whole nother episode's worth of discussion right there. And that's why I was like, holy mackerel. So many things going on this day, this couple of days, this week, this fortnight. And that's going to have its own set of bizarre and interesting ramifications in different ways, I'm sure, in Mother Russia and here in the United States, amongst those who are discussing and analyzing these kinds of events, and or spewing nonsense and obvious propaganda about them. But I digress, and I reel it back. There is something truly creepy, crazy, and alarming about how enthusiastically Putin simping people like Trump and now Vivek and everyone in between have made a huge push, and it's not really new. At least it's been around for as long as Putin himself had been past tense eyeballing and or plotting his ascent to power in Russia. And I must say, I have to agree with some of the things that Nikki Haley and Pence and Christie said about how absolutely unacceptable it is that, like, I'm not pro-war, you guys. I'm not pro-war. But I'm also not going to be pro whatever the heck is going on in this Putin-simping, pro-Russia, fake pacifism that's being tossed around by people like Vivek Vishwammy. I'm sorry, I had to give it one try, and I knew I was going to butcher it. Also, I don't have it in front of me. I really should have probably pulled it up. But yeah. Other things that I want to call out before we wrap this up, because this show has gone a little bit way longer than I expected it to. I really wanted it to be under 45, and it's at 56 minutes. But I mean, real, raw, radically unscripted. No one gave me pages to read, friends, when I sat down here. This is all my real life thoughts. One of the things that made me laugh watching this, it was truly, genuinely hilarious watching them all uniformly complain about the national debt. And not one of them ever, and this is, of course, nothing new, nothing surprising. This has been the Republican Party since I first met them. This is one of the oldest gimmicks about them, two-faced, hypocritical gimmicks about them. But bemoaning and clutching of pearls and bitching and moaning and pointing of fingers about national debt, and not once admitting that it was their president and their party kowtowing to that president, Mr. Trump, that added a historic, unprecedented $8 trillion in new national debt in under 4 years during the Trump administration. I mean, that's the greatest facepalm moment of the evening. What else do I want to hit up before we get out of this thing? Before I forget. Oh, wait. Thank you, DJ Zed. Here is another bit of DJ Zed music to begin to wind us out. This little audio entertainment track is entitled Alchemical Android Anthro. A DJ Zed live to tape Tech Step DNB 101 Remix Live Audio Asset Engineering Improvised performance for your entertainment from the Future Was Yesterday album, if I'm not mistaken. Please do take a hot moment to check it out and enjoy. And if you like what you're hearing, support us, Comedy Robot Duo, over on SoundCloud by finding us by visiting solo.to/Mr. Zebra. Hands up, hands up, hands up. Hands up, hands up, hands up. No, I know. DJ Zed and I are reminiscing about the very first impression that we got from the whole debate. The biggest. It was both the first thing that struck me right away. Again, I was really keen on not only what they said, but how the audience responded. and how each politician seemed to either be trying to intentionally hit the audience with a certain way or evoke a certain kind of response from the audience, or was oblivious of that mode of communication. But it was really fascinating just how split the audience appeared to be, or seemed to be. I'm talking about the live audience there at the debate. As far as what I could hear in terms of their auditory reaction, of how split they were about Trump. The reactions to some of the pro-Trump and some of the anti-Trump commentary coming from different people at different times was not what I expected it to be. Was not what I believe it probably would have been if Donald J. Trump had been there. Imagine this. If Donald J. Trump had gone to the debate but had refused to speak, I assure you, I speculatively, strongly feel confident in suggesting that there would have been a very different composition to the audience, and therefore a noticeably measurable different level of response to that divide, or in regards to, pro-Trump, anti-Trump sentiment and the debate, because Trump wasn't there. But the most Trumpian, the most Trumptopian, the most Trumpy of Trumptopian, to get most grammatically correct, as far as I think, in terms of the wordsmithing, right? The most Trumpy of Trumptopian sentiment was expressed there by Ron DeSantis and Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy. And I'm sorry, I take a little giggly delight in that, because I am someone who, in real life, as an artist, has a really long and, for many people, very, very awkwardly difficult to pronounce name, which is why in my creative endeavors I go as the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. But that's neither here nor there. From Mr. Vivek, as I'm going to call him, and Mr. Ron, let's just go first name. Let's get cozy. As Vivek and Ron, and awkwardly on some things, Mr. Pence, and others everyone there was trying to be as pro-Trump as they have calculated they could afford to be. And that, in my mind, is not a good thing. That's a criticism of the overall thing, right? So it was really, really interesting. I was very intrigued and fascinating. Beat by beat, statement by statement, there seemed to be three different pluralities of audience type in my assessment of like how the politicians engaged the audience and sort of succeeded and or failed based on the responses. As far as Vivek, my gnarliest comment was from the earliest in the evening. I wrote down and then shared on social media, but I wrote it down first as a note for this episode. But I shared this as a quote, as if I were quoting my own episode, which I couldn't because I hadn't posted it yet. But anyways, I haven't recorded it yet. But quote, wow. Oh, I may have misspelled his name. Vivek no, I think that's his name correctly spelled. So I think I wanted to be as formal as possible, and I went and looked it up so I can copy paste it. Vivek Ramaswamy, who happens to factually be born to immigrant parents from not here in America, although he was born here in America. I forget where. I looked that up. I know that he was born here in America in some American city that is neither on the West Coast, but would be considered kind of an East Coast adjacent city. Anyways, that's apparent. But he's what many GOP voters would call an immigrant. And let us not forget, he looks like the kind of person the vast majority of Republican voters would, under certain sort of my dander's up and I've got a grumpy attitude, would take a very judgmental first impression glance at and be tempted to go back to where they came from. Like, he does not look like he's from around here. He looks like a foreigner. Like, more so than me, and I am a foreigner. He was born here, I was not. Which is a fun fact that people often don't take into account about what's going on in my mind and what I'm actually saying. And where my actual perspective comes from. Because people just make all kinds of projectionary assumptions about who and what I am and what the F is going on in my brain. But I digress. As a first generation child of immigrants foreign to America, it was quite bizarre and weird and a little personally, like, I don't want to say I took offense because, as you may know, longtime listeners, I'm not one to generally be that kind of person. I'm not easily offended. I don't censor myself on this show because I think certain words are bad to use. I avoid using foul language on my show and only occasionally allow myself some F-bombs and then will immediately apologize to them because I don't want to deal with the hassle of taking on the full-blown foul language rating as a podcast host. But I've been a salty, foul-mouthed, expletive-riddled, talks like a sailor since about the age of 9.5. When I thought it was appropriate and for the purposes of effective comedic communication, and only after reading the room. Effectively. But I digress. That's neither here nor there. What I was shocked by was not that nobody cursed. Although, this is worse because I'm not offended by salty language, right? And I'm not easily offended. But this was egregious enough in my mind that I would like to say it should be offensive to any and all voters of either political party, Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Because, the independents, although not technically a party, are a party, right? There's too many third parties, but I include all the multitude of third parties. They are all effectively just one big virtual party, despite the fact that they don't have the official infrastructure of having a NC around them. But there should be a third NC. If there's a GOP, there's the RNC. I like to sometimes call them the GNC or the GOP-NC. But there's the Republican National Committee. There's the Democratic National Committee. There should be the spectrum of third parties, independents, National Committee or Convention or whatever the C stands for. I think everyone who votes and is also a child of people who immigrated to this country, and for the record, almost all y'all are, right? As our Aboriginal friends might point out, our Native American descended friends might point out, all y'all illegal. From the perspective of those who lived here before the colonization of this continent began. But that's a whole tough pill to swallow point about which I've already had much discussion on this show in various episodes, and probably have done a specific episode about. And what am I calling people to be offended by or asking, isn't this offensive? Like, isn't this really kind of creepy? Maybe offensive isn't the right word, but it's alarming and disturbing. And whoa, that's a red flag as far as I'm concerned. And if I were a card-carrying, blue-blooded, patriotic, voting Republican, which technically I'm not, but if I were, I would not find this to be acceptable. But Vivek Ramaswamy, again, born to immigrant parents, very brown-skinned immigrant parents, was really effectively leaning hard on something that's not very new to the right-wing spectrum of politics, which is xenophobic, isolationist, anti-immigrant, pseudo-nationalist, vibe, rhetoric. And it seemed to somehow kind of be working for him, kind of. The comment that seemed to get him the least support, that got him the most, like, whoas and borderline actual boos and catcalls, was when he claimed to be the only person on that stage to be bought and paid for. And that's the irony, folks. That's the big elephant in the room, hard pill to swallow about it. Hashtag 2 wings, 1 bird. If there are politicians in the Democratic Party that are unduly influenced by corporate influence, then holy moly, is that true of the Republican Party? By both Big Pharma, I mean, who claimed to have personally invented Operation Warp Drive, which was effectively the biggest flippity flop in Trumptopian Republican anti-vaxxer history, right? And who gets not only dark money but open not dark money and a public report card grading them from the military industrial complex as and as lobbied for by the NRA, the Republicans. I'm sure the Democrats get a little bit of that action too, but for any of them to clutch their own pearls and pretend that they're not taking money, corporate money, in multiple ways, in multiple levels of obscurity, from straight up standard, hypernormal, totally legal lobbyist money to the same sort of creepy, apparently very corrupt kind of, is it bribery of Mr. What's his name over on the Supreme Court? Who's the Republican George Soros? I had his name at the tip of my tongue a hot minute ago, and now it's gone. But the guy that's paying for Clarence Thomas, and the other guy that's paying for, and the several other guys, the weird little, is it a circuit? Is it a coven? Is it a cabal of rich white nationalists that kept taking this prominent African American Supreme Court judge, in deep into their money pit? Like, what? Hello? Like, please stop kidding yourselves. And Republican voters, please stop playing along. Big oil, big pharma, big bullet, big machine gun lines the pockets of all of them. But I digress. That he was leaning into that anti-immigrant, xenophobic, pseudo, it doesn't, the reason it doesn't compute, because those tropes are all trademarked, the true blue central pillar beliefs of ethno-nationalists, of white ethno-nationalists here in America, right? The same people, the same blonde-haired, blue-eyed people denying that there is a neo-Nazi problem in this country and a KKK problem in this country. And the people who deny that there are Nazis here but accuse everyone in Ukraine of being Nazis are have created this phenomena that a very dark-skinned, dark-haired, dark-eyed, not white, child of foreigners like Vivek Ramaswamy can try to gain political momentum by espousing that kind of rhetoric it's just unacceptable. And categorically, it's the most American thing in the world. And by being so, also categorically the most un-American thing in the world. Right? Because there's always been those two Americas. The aspirational, we aspire to be, we the people, one nation. And I don't want to include the other phrase that a lot of us were indoctrinated with, because that was brought into existence not by the founding fathers, but by the same sort of white national, pseudo-religious, pseudo-nationalist types in the 50s that were wrestling, to get people to realize are the real sort of problematic issue on the right today. But that was just the biggest, wow, we've really, truly come 100% full circle on the bizarroness that was, for example, exemplified by the really, really proud black people for Trump, who just refused to acknowledge the dog whistle calling and the wink wink nudge nudge. I'm not a racist because I'm the least racist person in the room, but also I'm not gonna mind if all the racists in America openly support me, openly love me, and openly espouse and admire my tenor, attitude, and trolling of America. But I digress. It was quite a thing, man. Another thought that I want to get out before we wrap this up: their fixation, the Republican Party's fixation with the southern border, is bizarre to me. Because not only have the Democrats wanted to reform the immigration system in order to prevent illegal immigration and create a more reasonable legal path for correct and proper legal immigration and asylum seeking in this country, but they're the ones who've acted the most obstructionist against that goal, which they sort of claim to espouse. And ironically, they make a big mess. They just love, making a mucky mess down there, whilst radically ignoring the simple reality that more people cross the northern border illegally than do the southern border. And they'll just ignore that forever, which is really weird and really interesting, and is one of those things that makes you go, with your hand with your chin in your hand, scratching at the beard, quite deeply for several minutes and or hours at a time. But put a pin on it, because I just wanted to call it out, and we've discussed it before on the show, and I'm sure we'll come around to discuss it again in future episodes. Friends, the GOP is in a frenzy of trying to look like they've got their act together and being a hot, disoriented mess of not being able to align themselves with the idea of either letting go of Donald Trump or holding him accountable, right? And contending with this portion of their own tribe of many loosely interconnected tribes of people who want to go full bore, abandon that which was the Republican Party in order to assume the cult of personality identity of full-blown Trumtopianism, which is really sort of just like the worst parts of the Republican Party taken to some new oblique and obtuse extreme of absurdity, in my humble opinion. But as I was about to introduce a hot minute ago, my personal absolute top number one favorite moment from the entire debate, and Nikki Haley had quite a few really powerful, interesting things to say that I couldn't disagree with throughout the thing, even though I would never vote for her. If I was a card-carrying Republican voter, I would not vote for her either. Right now, I don't know who I would vote for out of the current declared nominees. But Nikki Haley did something which was awesome, in my opinion. She called out the chaotic, nonsensical, jibber-jabber nonsense of all of that juvenile man-boy verbal jousting. Jousting? It's supposed to be jousting, not joisting. I mistyped it there. Going on that stage during the debate with this delightfully awesome Margaret Thatcher quote. Quote, "If you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman." I wouldn't vote for her, but also, if she won, I would hope the best for her and begrudgingly give her my intellectual support and in the places and times and choices and administrative actions and words that I could bring myself to agree with, which on and off throughout her entire political presence that I've been aware of her, there's some things that I agree with, and there's a bunch of other things that I'm like, oh, good grief, why do you have to swing so far in some other nonsensical direction? But there you go, friends. That's my, there was a lot of things said. And I can dig deeper into like the craziness. Like, WTF does Mr. Vivek Benamishwamy mean when he says that the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance ever invented? That's some creepy Big Brother sounding nonsense. That I'm like, the family isn't government, and the government shouldn't be part of your family. Right? And, the thing that they all have in common, no matter how much they try to differentiate themselves as individual candidates, is that they're still over there trying to be leaders of the Republican Party. And the Republican Party has been, since I started observing them during the Ronald Reagan days when he was the president, is the party of self-debilitating, self-undermining, self-destroying, self-exposing hypocrisy, right? And the things that they are the most angry about in others are often reflective or indicative of the things that they're most egregiously doing wrong. And they don't really have that. Now, the greatest critique of what Trump and others have managed to achieve in the most recent, going on 7 years now, it will soon be a decade of Trumptopian thinking, friends. And it feels like so just one hot minute ago and a quarter past yesterday that Donald Trump rode down his gold-plated, maybe fake gold-plated escalator from in his Trump Tower to announce his candidacy. And that's this blatant hypernormalization of the worst of it, of the most hypocritical parts of it. So even those amongst them that are trying to differentiate themselves from Donald Trump by standing up and speaking out against him, and I do applaud them and give them what little bit of credit is worth giving there, they're all still trying to take back control of the party that is failing to live up to Christ's words and pretending to be, literally is, the self-declared, self-appointed party of Jesus Christ. Now, that's a whole big, fat, multiple set of pins on the corkboard, because not only have we talked about it before here on the show and on social media, but I'm sure we are bound to talk about it again. I thank you for listening to this episode, and I bid you a fond farewell as we play ourselves out with a little bit of... Well, let me swipe on these and make sure that I move them out of the playlist before I forget, or at least download on the playlist so we can listen to them again, but not right away. Bottom of the playlist you go. Brand new track that we played today. Tracks, plural, sorry. And thank you, DJ Zed, for helping being the DJ Zed. Which one did we play? Oh, smack. I totally forgot. It wasn't that one. I'll have to look and double check it. Oh, well. Thank you, friends. That's what I got to say about all of it. And please do take a dive as deep as you like. Take all the time in the world. Take it in short chunks. Push play and just and jump around different episodes. There's always too many things going on in the world and never enough time to discuss them all. But here we are trying to one medium length, short, or super unfortunately long episode at a time, taking a stab at discussing a bunch of them. Not for the purposes of preaching to you to blindly agree with me, but to let you hear clearly, effectively, my thoughts, concerns, and most importantly, questions about everything. Because question everything is meaningless if you only question those ideas and individuals you are told to question by your politician, by your preacher, by your by your ideological content from whatever source. So let's remember, we got to question everything, including our own politicians, ideology, beliefs, systems, etc. Namaste to you, friends. Go be good human beings to each other out there in the real world, as well as on the interwebs and the social medias.
And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast.
Wait. I almost forgot. In other news, in our comic relief end of kicker right here at the end of the show after the outro, in other news, there seems to be, at least on the socials, some sort of semi-well organized marketing effort to promote and or establish and or recruit for what appears to be promoting itself as a real world, brand new, organized religion based on, believe it or not, the Star Wars Disney Plus distributed Mandalorian TV show. And oh my God, do I have some things to say about that. But, and it's really weird. I've seen a whole series of promotional posts about it, and it seems to be describing itself as if it were a, quote, real joke religion up the alley along the lines of, similar to other real world, actual, registered, quote unquote, joke religions like Universal Life Church and the Dudism, Church of Latter-day Dude, both of which I am ordained ministers of. And I was, at first glance, kind of curious. I'm not as deeply in love with The Mandalorian, and if I haven't already, I fully intend on doing a totally irrelevant media review episode of the show. But there's a single solitary bottom line, like, WTF with the entire vision for that show, why did they didn't need to, it didn't have to happen this way, but they went with creating canon lore about a cult that takes a really weird, creepy, complicated oath that implicitly requires that they never take off their helmet / armor ever, if I understand correctly, with the tiniest of exceptions, that from what I understand. And I would have to do a little bit more actual research. I'm not claiming to have researched this. I've had conversations about this, and I've watched the show. To never take, if a real world religion did that, if that was really, and all religions are cults, by the way, and I don't mean that in the most negative, there's just, like, culture is a cult. Cult is the root word of culture and organized religion, I think. And there's, like, a neutral definition of the term cult, and then there's the scary, icky, yucky, everyone should be taken out of that and rescued from it definition of the term cult. And then there's the specificity of the definition of the term cult of personality, which is its own thing, separate and individuated from religious cult. Those are all different terms. But I digress. My biggest problem with the show, and my biggest problem with a real world religion based on the show, is if they go hardcore, if these characters really went as hardcore as they sort of make them out to maybe possibly have gone, and if people in the real world went that hard, they would all eventually fall over dead from gangrene. Because you cannot, based on historically repeatable, verifiable facts about, like, human hygiene, never change your clothes, especially a helmet. And I guess we'll do, but wow. Seriously, that's a new, someone, I don't mean to disrespect, I get it, it's a super popular show, but I've got an even deeper concern about this religion, which has nothing to do with the show. The show is the show, and it's fun and quirky and weird, and there's things about it I like. And, I've got my nuanced and complicated, positive and satirical commentary about that character, otherwise known as Baby Yoda, which Pappy, what's his name, would be the first to remind you his name is Grogu. It's funny, I was struggling to remember Grogu's name. I completely forgot Pappy, what's his face, is the actor who plays the Mandalorian's name. Because I really do appreciate his work. He's hilarious and interesting and weird, and seems like a cool, interesting human being. I don't know him personally, and I could be totally wrong about all of that. But this religion, well, more the content, if it's a real religion, okay, weird. I need to go find out if it's already like a registered real world organized religion. The way, at least in England, there is a Jedi religion. right? Now, but the material, the promotional material, and almost all promotional material qualifies as propaganda. I mean, depending on how cynical of a definition of propaganda you want to take, because there is the real world functioning definition of propaganda, and then there's the sort of common popular use interpretation of that. But I digress. It has this sneaky, slippery, it slides it in gently over time, NRA vibe. Like, it's got a lot of, like, strap up, this is the way kind of thing going on. And that's sort of creepy. That's sort of creepy. And we've already got that, friends. We've already got a hyper-conservative, right-leaning, pseudo-religion that's probably got a broad dash of ethno-nationalism in it that literally worships machine guns and brings them into their... Or at least I've seen multiple reports of that claim. Now, I've never actually made the effort, and I would love to. I'd love to have the capital disposable, like, assets to have the security and the travel, what's the word? Accoutrement or equipment required for me to be able to go and studio quality with a co-host and someone playing the part of, like, our musical entertainer sidekick character DJ Zed, go to places and do, stand-up comedy style, not journalism interviews. But I digress. WTF, you guys, with this. We don't need more of that, I don't think. But I digress. Pin on the corkboard. We've talked about that before, and we talk about that a bunch of times more. And for those of you who are really new to the show, before we finally shut it down, the corkboard is just an analogy for all the ideas that we've discussed at some point or another, and or feel certain to come full circle and have to discuss again on the show. So imagine a corkboard with keywords and, a bit of that red string connecting things in a fun, crazy, chaotic fashion. I'm signing off, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Please tune in for more.